Many people start their morning with a familiar dish they believe is healthy. But few know that the very first meal of the day can affect memory, speech, and alertness for the rest of their life. What you eat at 7 a.m. could be what helps you remember your grandchild's name 10 years from now, or it could be what slowly fades it away each morning. And I want to ask you one thing: the first thing you eat at 7 in the morning, is that a deliberate choice, or just an old habit no one ever checked for you? In the next few minutes, I will share with you the food that should be eaten exactly at 7 in the morning, the scientific reason behind it, and how one person changed her memory and alertness just thanks to one very small change in breakfast. I still clearly remember Mrs. Rose, 70 years old, living in Ohio. She was a disciplined and meticulous mother. Her breakfast was always the same: a slice of white bread with margarine and a glass of pure orange juice. She never skipped meals, didn't snack, drank enough water every day, and even kept a food journal. But then, over time, she began to forget things. Sometimes it was a neighbor's name, sometimes what she was cooking. One day, she got into her car, then came back inside just because she forgot where she was going. Her family took her to the doctor. No stroke. No major damage. An MRI showed only one thing: blood flow to the memory region, the hippocampus, slightly reduced in the morning. And that was what surprised me. Not because it was a serious illness, but because the cause came from what seemed like a perfect breakfast. Mrs. Rose never thought she was eating wrong. And many others don't think so either, because they're eating what feels good, not what the brain actually needs. I'm not telling you this story to make you worry. I'm telling it to offer a new perspective. And to help you ask yourself, what did you eat this morning? And was it truly good for your brain? At the end of this video, I'll share with you the meal I usually recommend my older patients eat, right at 7 in the morning. It's not complicated. It's not expensive. It just needs to be the right time and the right structure. This meal can awaken the nervous system, stabilize blood sugar, and nourish the memory region you want to keep strong. But before I say exactly what that meal is, I want you to hear the rest of Mrs. Rose's story. Because from those early signs that seemed small, I learned a very big lesson about the brain, and about breakfast in older adults. After that visit, I began to accompany Mrs. Rose on her journey to change breakfast. She was very cooperative. She wasn't offensive or stubborn. She just looked at me and asked, in a slow voice, "So you really think breakfast affects memory, doctor?" I nodded. And I told her, not only does it affect memory, but it might be the most important factor if we know how to eat at the right time. I guided her to switch from orange juice to cold-soaked oats. Instead of white bread, I suggested whole grain bread. Instead of margarine, I asked her to try unsweetened almond butter, just one small spoon. I advised her to boil a soft egg each morning, add a few walnuts, and try to keep breakfast time consistently around 7 o'clock. These changes sound simple, but I knew for someone who had maintained her routine for over 30 years, it was a challenge. At the beginning, Mrs. Rose didn't feel much difference. The first week, she found the taste a bit strange. The second week, she told me that every morning she had to remember each item, which made her a bit less eager to eat. But by the third week, she started sharing something that caught my attention. She said she was sleeping better. No more waking up in the middle of the night. In the morning, her head felt lighter, without that foggy, unpleasant feeling she used to have. One morning, she picked up the phone and dialed her daughter's number without opening her notebook. I remembered the phone number. She smiled softly, but I saw real surprise in her eyes. Small signs like that are good signals to me. But for the person experiencing them, it's the feeling of coming back to pieces of themselves. Memory is part of identity. When you begin to remember someone's name, or no longer have to guess what you were about to do in the kitchen, you start to feel like yourself again, little by little. What I cherished even more was how she shared it. No fuss. No show. She just recalled a small moment, that morning when she sat sipping tea and didn't feel her head heavy like usual. And she thought, maybe it was thanks to the new breakfast. Just that one sentence was enough for me to understand her brain had started thanking her. From Mrs. Rose's journey, I realized there are very small things in the morning rhythm that, when placed in the right spot at the right time, can change the state of a slowing brain region. When someone tells me they eat breakfast regularly, drink enough water, choose healthy food but still feel tired, forgetful, or unable to focus, I usually don't ask them what they eat right away. I ask something else first: what time do you eat? Because really, the brain doesn't just need the right food. It also needs the right timing to absorb and start working effectively. You may not have noticed, but your brain doesn't wake up at the same time as the rest of your body. In fact, it often flips the switch about an hour earlier to prepare for all the activities of the day. And the golden time for the nervous system to start running smoothly is around 7 in the morning. At that time, the level of cortisol in your blood, the hormone that helps you stay alert and process information, reaches its natural stable point. If given the right kind of food at that time, the nerve cells begin transmitting signals steadily, and the speed of connection between brain regions becomes optimized. Then, memory, focus, and emotional rhythm all begin to open up like a door letting in the morning light. But if you feed the wrong thing at that moment, like a glass of overly sweet orange juice, a bowl of sugary instant cereal, or a slice of white bread with canned fruit jam, then you're flooding your brain with fast-absorbing glucose. This causes insulin to spike suddenly. When insulin spikes, blood sugar swings, blood vessels contract, and the brain starts running low on energy, all within the next hour. That's when you begin to feel a dull headache, drowsiness, or find it hard to focus on anything even though it's only 9 a.m. Not to mention, if you eat too late after 8 a.m. or skip breakfast entirely, the brain is put into a state of silent stress. It has to draw energy from the liver and muscles, triggering stress hormones, which weaken memory. That's when you don't understand why you're irritable, or feel like there's a thin fog covering your head all morning. On the other hand, if you eat at the right time and choose the right foods, the brain starts up smoothly, like a car that's been warmed before moving. Foods with a low glycemic index like cold-soaked oats, soft-boiled eggs, whole grain bread, almonds, and just ripe bananas all help maintain stable blood sugar and feed the neural synapses with clean fuel. I once compared this to a morning with gentle sunlight. Not too harsh, not too cold. Just enough to make you feel alert, comfortable, and to feel your brain working in harmony. No tension. No fatigue. No heaviness in the head. And that state doesn't come from medication. It comes from the right combination of timing and food. That's why I often tell my older patients, breakfast isn't just a habit. It's a decision. A small decision, made daily. But one that can preserve your voice, memory, and clarity for the long journey ahead. When it comes to healthy breakfasts, many people think of familiar names like pure orange juice, toast, low-fat milk, or instant cereals. It sounds right, since these often appear in nutrition pamphlets, TV ads, or advice from older documents. But when I started working more deeply with older patients, I realized something. Some foods may look good, but aren't suitable for the brain when eaten first thing in the morning. Take orange juice for example. It's a familiar drink for millions of Americans every morning. But did you know that one glass of orange juice can contain up to 20 grams of natural sugar, equal to 5 teaspoons of white sugar? If you drink orange juice without fiber or protein, the sugar absorbs rapidly, causing a sudden blood sugar spike followed by a sharp drop. The brain doesn't like that. It needs a steady stream of glucose, not a flood. Then there's white bread. Pure white, soft, easy to swallow. But also the bread with the highest glycemic index, almost stripped of fiber after refinement. Eating a slice of white bread with margarine and sweet jam gives you a breakfast that seems light, but actually hits the pancreas and nervous system hard. You might feel alert for the first hour, then fall into a foggy state, struggle to focus, or oddly crave coffee. Instant cereal isn't much better. The packaging is full of words like whole grain, low fat, or vitamin D. But if you look closely, many types have added sugars, artificial colors, and flavorings. And when eaten with sweetened milk, the entire healthy breakfast becomes an insulin storm for older adults. That's why I began creating a reverse list. Simpler foods, not requiring fancy preparation, not flashy in appearance, but aligned with the biology of the brain. And the results I saw after patients made changes were very clear. For example, soft-boiled eggs. One egg provides complete protein and choline, a precursor to acetylcholine, a key neurotransmitter for memory. Eating one egg in the morning not only stabilizes blood sugar but also sustains mental energy longer than coffee. Cold-soaked oats with unsweetened plant-based milk is a choice I often recommend. Oats provide beta-glucan, which helps control cholesterol, and have a low glycemic index. When eaten slowly and chewed well, oats become a protective layer for the gut and help the brain feel safe. Just ripe bananas, not too green, not too soft, offer steady natural sugars and rich potassium, which helps regulate blood pressure and ease neck and shoulder tension, a common issue in chronic headache patients. And a spoon of almond butter or a few walnuts in the morning not only slow sugar absorption but also provide omega-3s, essential fats that help maintain neural cell membranes and improve signal transmission. I often compare the right breakfast to a steady current flowing through the brain. Eggs are the switch. Oats are the lasting fuel. Nut butter is the insulation. And orange juice at the wrong time is just a quick spark that makes the nervous system flicker, then fade throughout the morning. The interesting thing is that when my patients changed their meals this way, they didn't need to fast or cut out their favorite foods completely. They just needed to change the timing. For example, orange juice can be used at noon after a fiber-rich meal. Cereal can be eaten in small amounts in the afternoon with unsweetened almond milk. Just by knowing when and what to pair it with, you can turn a food from unsuitable to acceptable. The last thing I want you to remember is, breakfast isn't just for feeling full. It's the first greeting you send to your brain. Send a message that is gentle, steady, and on time. Because the brain doesn't need noise. It needs consistency, kindness, and just enough patience each day. I know that some advice sounds perfectly right, but when put into real life, it's not easy to follow. Especially when the listener is someone over 60 who's lived their whole life with a set morning habit. That's why I always try not only to say what's good and what to avoid, but to show clearly how to rebuild breakfast from the smallest steps. The first thing I suggest to my patients is to fix the breakfast time each day, ideally between 6:45 and 7:15 a.m. Because not just the food, but the eating time also affects absorption rate, biological rhythm, and how the brain processes blood sugar after the first meal of the day. Next, I guide them to create a simple breakfast tray with 3 parts, a protein source, a slow carb, and a group of healthy fats. If you often suffer from insomnia or wake up tired, I usually start with a soft-boiled egg, cold-soaked oats, and a slice of just ripe banana. This trio is light enough to avoid bloating, yet steady enough to keep the brain from running out of energy mid-morning. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, the oats can be topped with a bit of chia seeds and the fruit portion reduced to a few small slices. You can swap the banana for a slice of apple or half a pear. Prioritize fruits with skin and eat them whole instead of juicing. Juice makes sugar enter quickly, while chewing stimulates the brain's motor area and allows slower absorption. For those who often feel dizzy in the morning, I recommend drinking warm water right after waking up, about 200 to 300 milliliters, possibly with a pinch of natural mineral salt. Then, sit still for 5 minutes, take 3 deep breaths, and only then begin eating. At this point, you can have a slice of whole grain bread with nut butter and a few slices of cucumber or steamed soft vegetables. Vegetables in the morning not only provide hydration but also help stabilize blood sugar better than pure carbs. I often note to patients that they don't need to standardize everything the same each day. But there is one thing that should stay fixed to the way they start. If each morning begins with warm water, a deep breath, and a meal that thanks the brain, you'll slowly feel different. No need to compare with others. If you just feel your head is less heavy than yesterday, your mind less foggy than last week, then you're already heading in the right direction. One patient once told me that when she switched to the breakfast tray I suggested, she felt like she was tending to a small garden in her mind. Watering, nourishing the soil, clearing fallen leaves every morning. And then after a few weeks, she said, the green buds started to sprout again. No one else could see them, but she could feel them. I believe each of us can do that. No need to be a doctor, no need to read thick manuals. Just start with a breakfast tray that honors the brain. A small act of kindness for your mind. A gentle decision each morning to preserve what matters most, clarity, memory, and the ability to fully live each day. If you've made it with me this far, perhaps you understand like I do that breakfast is not just a meal. It's the most important moment of the day, where we can send a clear signal to the brain that says, I care about you, I want you well, and I'm ready to change. I don't expect you to remember every piece of information I just shared. I only hope you remember this: there's 1 hour in the day when if we eat right, the brain will thank us all morning. There's one food that if chosen wisely, can preserve memory, clarity, and even your voice as old age comes knocking. And there's one small act each morning like sitting still for 5 minutes, breathing deeply, chewing slowly that can restore a rhythm we thought was too ingrained to change. I believe change doesn't begin with knowledge. It starts with one honest question: what did I eat this morning? Did I eat because I was hungry, or because I want to be well? Did I choose based on habit, or based on what my body truly needs? If you live with aging parents, or if you yourself are entering the age where memory starts to show small gaps, I hope you'll try starting tomorrow. Don't think you have to change everything. Try changing one thing. Change the way you eat. Change the timing. And listen to what begins to shift inside you. I used to think I would save many patients with medicine, machines, and medical expertise. But after 20 years, I realized that what preserved most of their lives wasn't in a hospital. It was in the small kitchen, in the breakfast tray, in the morning sunlight through the window, and the simple foods they chose to begin the day. If you're still reading these lines, I invite you to share your breakfast story. What do you usually eat at 7 in the morning? Is there a dish that makes you feel better? Is there something you once changed and saw your memory improve? Share it in the comments, because your experience might be what helps someone out there live more clearly and healthily starting tomorrow. And if you found this video helpful, don't hesitate to follow. Each week, I will share a true story. Not to alarm, but to remind us that the brain is still whispering to us every day. And we just need to pause a moment to listen. Next week, I will share with you 3 foods that seem healthy but silently thicken the blood if eaten at the wrong time. This story comes from a father who once thought he lived very moderately, until he lost his memory in just 6 months.